All right, hello everyone. This is Mr. McIntosh. I'm going to go over our week 2 assignments and then I'll be explaining the week 3 assignments after that. So, last week we did a couple different items with our new unit, To Kill a Mockingbird. And kind of tied in with that unit is a little mini section on public education. So, we'll be talking throughout this unit about segregation, desegregation, public school funding, equity, equality, inequality, etc. So these two units are kind of paired in with one another. So the first thing we looked at was or one of the things we looked at was the school resegregation article, where we defined equity and equality. And you had a little illustration at the bottom to show you the difference between the two. And then you read the article and went through a couple questions here. The questions are largely opinion based. I would say this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Pretty much, okay, so everything except number one are opinion based. But number one, I can at least help you with the author's main point. How does she back it up? So the author basically explains how resegregation is occurring in American public schools according to some data that was recently made public. And then she backs it up with a series of examples, kind of using Mississippi, a particular county that's divided by railroad tracks, as her case study or her vignette. So then you had a chance to kind of think about these questions here. So, whether or not you think it's the government's role to make sure that schools are not segregated. Is it the government's role to ensure that neighborhoods aren't segregated? Because oftentimes neighborhoods are tied in with schools themselves, right? Because you go to school close to where you live. Should all public schools be equal? Should they be equitable, in your opinion? How do the schools suffer from inequality or inequity? And is there a solution to this? So if you had to choose a realistic, implementable, and specific solution that governments could address this issue, what would that look like? Then we went through kind of opinions about To Kill a Mockingbird. Again, a lot of these are opinion-based, but hopefully you started to reflect on some of these ideas that will become more salient as we study throughout the course of the unit. And then you wrote about one of those in particular. In terms of background information, there's some information about the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. So hopefully you took notes on this section here. Great Depression, I'm sure you have seen it in the past. Maybe you haven't studied it in a ton of depth, but it talks about the kind of economic impacts, which lead to the social impacts of both the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. So the novel is set during this time period here, the 1930s, in Macomb, Alabama, which is a fictional town. And then there's some information about FDR, a really interesting president, beloved for the most part by United States citizens. In fact, so beloved that he served a fourth term, and he was president until his death, when he died in office. And then after his death, we imposed the 2-limit presidential term cap. And then we go through, meet some of the characters. We have Atticus, the father. He is a fascinating character throughout the course of this novel. We have his 2 children, Scout and Jem. Scout is the younger one. She is the narrator. So we see the course, the novel we see through her eyes. And then we meet Cal. I don't think you've met Anne Alexandra quite yet, or at least not in a meaningful way. And then their childhood friend, Dill. And we start to meet some of the different characters in the neighborhood. So the first few chapters are really kind of an introduction to Macomb, an introduction to this, sleepy little town in the American South. There's a lot of exposition, so it can feel kind of slow at times, the first section of the book. Once we get into the trial section, things really pick up. It's very, much faster paced. It's very exciting, very kind of on the edge of your seat. But in order for that in order for you to get the full impact of that, really you have to build up the background of the different characters, and of Macomb County itself. What are the social standards of where the novel is set? What's the interaction like between the characters? What are the relationships like, especially the race relationships? So the first few chapters start to dive into that. So you read the first four here. So they talk about the historical background of Macomb itself, Finch's Landing, etc. We're introduced to Dill, and then this recurring, I'm not sure what to call it exactly, recurring like situations of Boo Radley, this mysterious character. The children, have heard all these rumors about. They like to buy into the rumors very easily. We're not entirely sure if the rumors are true at this point in the story, but they're always, oh, we got to do these dares at the Boo Radley house, and he's a crazy man, and it's scary, and they do these dares to try to get close to the house. We also see the educational perspective. We have one of Scout's teachers, Miss Caroline, who is, in my opinion, a terrible teacher. She's very insecure. And she's so insecure that she scolds Scout for having learned to read from Atticus. I think she feels a little threatened by Scout. And then we're introduced to the Cunningham characters through Scout's interaction with Miss Caroline. She's kind of trying to explain the town to Miss Caroline since she's new. So we meet Walter there. That leads to a fight with Walter, a fight and then dinner, which is actually lunch, and the Southern colloquial term, they use dinner to talk about what we call lunch. And, we meet the Ewell family. They're described there as kind of being this poor white trash family. And there's the scene where they talk about how dirty they are and how there's like bugs crawling from their hair. And then speaking of crawling, Atticus has a great quote about, not to judge someone unless you've put on their skin and walked around in it for a little while. So or basically, putting on someone else's shoes, trying on someone else's shoes and walking around in them for a while. And we see throughout the course of the novel, Atticus in many regards is this kind of paragon of morality, right? He's a character who's has this code. He's very righteous. He tries his hardest to do the correct thing. He's not a perfect character, but he is someone who the children can reliably look up to in order to do the right thing, as someone who does the right thing. And then we start learning about this mysterious knot in the tree, or like this hole in the tree, where some mysterious figure, we don't know who it is at this point, is leaving the children random gifts. And we have the continuation of this item from back here, this like infatuation, this obsession that the children have with Boo Radley and, as the town's kind of mystery man. So they invent this game where the children play the Boo game, and they're all different characters, and they're kind of acting out this potentially fictitious lifestyle that they've invented for him, or that they've compiled through these town rumors about him. All right, so that's the first kind of couple sections there. In terms of this current week, so week 3, we're doing this video right now, obviously. This week is all about reading, so we'll finish section 1, which is a larger reading section than before, but you have the spring break week if you need to catch up. If you don't actually end up finishing by this week, hopefully you finish and have a nice break though. And the main focus, other than the reading, is the Canvas discussion board post. So the instructions are on Canvas. You'll do 2 items basically. So the first item is to do your first post about one of the topics from To Kill a Mockingbird. Let me open that up for you. And make sure you do that first post by Wednesday. So that way, when you do your second post of responding to someone else's post, you actually have some responses in there that you can respond to, right? If everyone waits until Friday, it's going to be very hard to respond to someone else's post. So the instructions are on here. So read through that. It's basically what I just went through. You're choosing one of those items, exploring it further, telling your personal reaction to it, tell what you think of the story so far. And make sure you do that by Wednesday, and then respond to someone else's post by Friday. That's pretty much it. I don't really have any other major updates or anything. Still waiting to hear back from APS and VDOE, that's Virginia Department of Education there. But I'll update you as soon as possible once I hear something. Other than that, we'll check back in after spring break, and I'll keep you posted on the results. All right, enjoy the beautiful weather.